We all know how tough it can be to collect supervision hours. That's why my friend and fellow therapist Rachel created Motivo, making clinical supervision easy and accessible. With over 1,200 vetted supervisors nationwide, I know you'll be able to find a supervisor that's right for you. Get started today at motivohealth.com/Joe. That's MOTIVO health.com/Joe. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1220. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast, where we help you build a thriving private practice you absolutely love. We do this through our membership community, through this podcast, through consulting, our event that we did last May, the Group Practice Boss Conference here in Traverse City, Michigan. We try to just bring people together in ways that are just super fun and exciting and different than just your typical business development. We want you to love your practice. We've been interviewing people just throughout this season that have done really just amazing things, mostly in the sports world. And for me to bring these together and say, well, how does this affect private practice? I think some people, there's a lot of podcasts out there that are just the business side of counseling and the business side of running your practice. But I'm a curious person. I think that we too often are in these information silos where we don't even realize how much we can learn from other areas. I remember I was reading one of, I think it was Malcolm Gladwell's books, and he was talking about how there was an ER in Britain that they found that the transfer of patients was when the biggest mistakes happened. And they actually went and they trained with a Formula One pit crew to see how they changed tires. And they then applied those things back to the ER, and they're like, error rate just dropped. They were doing better work in the ER because of training with a pit crew. Mac has famously, for their Genius Bar, they went and trained with concierges at hotels. And so to me, talking to people outside of our industry, it's interesting how often things overlap and mindsets there are very similar to mindsets that we see. So that's why I'm so excited to have Hillary Allen with us. Hillary is a professional ultra runner, scientist, and coach known for her resilience and grit in the sport of trail and mountain running. Nicknamed the Hilly Goat, like Billy Goat. I read that ahead of time and knew I was going to screw it up. The Hilly Goat, for her strength on steep terrain. She was among the top mountain runners in the world before a life-altering accident in 2017 when she fell 150 feet during a race in Norway. Despite severe injuries, including multiple fractures, she defied the odds with an incredible recovery, returning to elite competition. Hillary now shares her journey through coaching, public speaking, and her book, Out and Back, inspiring athletes to embrace setbacks as opportunities to grow. Hillary, welcome to the Practice the Practice podcast.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I am so excited to have you on the show. Tell me a little bit about, starting out in science before endurance racing, and then how'd you get into ultra racing and extreme challenges?
Yeah, well, looking back, it seems like it makes sense to me, but probably honestly, the most appropriate way to describe it is kind of by accident. I um
Mm.
I grew up in Colorado. I've always been, an outdoorsy person, but I was always a scientist first. In fact, I probably would describe myself more as a super nerd than more of an athlete. Running and moving outdoors is kind of a way to just get out energy and kind of think about scientific problems. But it wasn't actually until graduate school that I actually started really specifically endurance running. I was a tennis player in college. But it was always my childhood dream to be a scientist. Like my father and my mother were both scientists over at Colorado State University. And so I think, I always looked up to them. And so that was just my North Star of always working towards something, of going to graduate school, getting my PhD. And yeah, so it wasn't until I was actually in graduate school and a PhD program for neuroscience and physiology that I kind of just happened upon this world of trail and ultra running. And I was basically just using it as a time to get out of the lab, kind of, like I said, think about these scientific problems, explore like the physical realm of myself, as opposed to like the intellectual realm. And I honestly just fell in love with it, and I got training for my first road marathon. And in doing so, I found trail running and ultra running, and since then I kind of never looked back. And then yeah, I know there's a lot in there, but
Yeah, so 2017, like,
yeah.
things go awry. Like, tell us how that happened and what happened.
Yeah, so when I so after okay, so I basically got into this trail and ultra running, and I discovered I had this knack for it. I mean, you mentioned my nickname, Hilly Goat, and it's just because I love uphill steep running, and it was this specific style of running that was called sky running that I got into. And
Mm.
so to explain this, like in the world of trail running, basically anything trail running is anything off road, so off of just the pavement, and ultra running starts at anything above a marathon. And so I ran my first road marathon, and I was like, that's not far enough. Like I could go further. I still have energy. And let's add some hills in there. And so I started competing in this thing called sky running, which was 50K trails, so 31 miles. And they would climb kind of the most extreme terrain out there, like up 14,000-foot peaks, some like really direct lines up a mountains. It was notorious for ridgeline running. But in a 31-mile race, you'd climb about 14,000 feet, and you'd have to descend it too. So, like 12 to 14,000 feet on pretty like technical terrain. And this quickly just became, I loved it so much. And so, I kind of just discovered again by accident this series. And my first year racing, I won the US Skyrunning Series, and then that kind of catapulted me onto the World Skyrunning Series. And I was kind of exclusively racing in Europe because a lot of the most competitive races were over there. And this is happening quite quickly. Like my first year as a sponsored runner was 2015.
Mm.
And in 3 years, by 2017, like 3 seasons, I was ranked number one in the world in the sky running series. So basically, I had gone all in on this. I was, just seeing how far I could take this, short time in your life where you can be a professional athlete. And I would, race, live in Europe for the summers because that's when the racing season was. And in 2017, basically, it was the end of the season. It was the final race of the season, basically like a victory lap to kind of claim my title and then have the award
Mm.
ceremony. That was in this race in Norway, and it's a very technical race. You climb up to this ridge. It's called Humperocken Ridge. You can see it from the skyline of Tromsø, and it's rocky. It's like third, fourth class running, where you're basically having to put like a hand down or two hands down to kind of stabilize yourself. It's very steep and technical. And during this race, about in the midpoint, something happened where 1 minute I was running, and then the next, a rock slipped underneath my foot and it catapulted me off of this ridge line. And I ended up falling 150 feet.
Oh my God.
Um, yeah. And I mean, thankfully, obviously, it happened during a race. People saw me, but I mean, it's hard to it's hard to understand like how lucky I was to have survived. And I mean, I had a helicopter rescue, but like how I was just so severely injured. I think in total I broke 14 bones. I had surgeries in Norway. Had to stay in that hospital for 2 weeks before I could even fly home. Then I had 3 more surgeries in 2 days. The experts in CU Boulder, they boast some of the best medical doctors for sports in general. And
Mm.
this doctor was telling me that I would be lucky if I would be able to jog recreationally again. Like some of the injuries were that severe. Um, and it's a really humbling time to be literally at the fittest that I've ever been, feeling the most capable and on top of the world. And then in one moment, I couldn't even get out of bed unassisted. And this thing that I'd grown to love so much and had so much self-worth, frankly,
Yeah.
associated with it, I felt like it was taken from me. And then I was also surprised how quickly I could spiral into a depression and have no idea which way was up or like what I wanted to do with my life anymore, or like who I was as a person. It was incredible. But obviously looking back, there's so many things that I learned from it, and it was really an opportunity for growth, even though it was one of the hardest times in my life.
I imagine there was like the physical healing side, where as you healed, maybe that helped. But then also there had to be like an emotional, like, man, do I even want to go back into this thing that almost killed me? Like, how did that back and forth between the emotional healing and the physical healing go?
That's a really good question because I was not really prepared for that. I think as athletes, we rely so much upon our physical strength and we can use that almost as a crutch. And I know for sure I was. And we also get into this thing where your self worth is dependent upon the last race that you won or that you did well in or your last, good workout.
Mm.
And it can be, it's a psychological, it feels like a battleground sometimes because it's like, it's not, it's all conditional, right? And so I was experiencing that in in real time on a daily basis. And I was yes, it overlapped so much that sometimes I couldn't actually discern which was physical and which was emotional healing. But
Mm.
for me, actually, the hardest part of my recovery, like I said, I'm a scientist. I know the timelines of ligaments healing, of bones healing. Like it was something that I had this goal that I could work towards. And I knew, okay, like 6 weeks, I could start to weight bear in my arms, or, in 3 months, I could get this cast off my foot and maybe start walking again. I had little PT exercises that I could do every day, and you could see the like mini progressions. But it actually wasn't until so that all was easy because it was just a waiting game. And like you could kind of, it's like training, but just in a different way. But the emotional side of things, you know, I had just spent the past 3 years going all in on running and racing, and to not have a race on the horizon, to be separated from my community because I couldn't run with them. I felt emotionally isolated. And again, I felt like I didn't know who I was anymore, or I had this problem with self-worth outside of like who was I if I wasn't racing or doing something. And so the hardest part for me came when I got all my casts off and I appeared normal, but I was still unable to run and I still didn't feel like my normal self.
Yeah.
And so that's when and that was kind of like 6 months after the initial accident where I really had to dig in and really focus on that emotional healing that I had kind of been neglecting and really focusing on the physical healing. Um, yeah. And so that's where I had seen some sports psychologists and specifically people who specialize in trauma recovery because um, I think I logically I wanted to go back into running, but emotionally I wasn't sure because um, I was just at this point where I don't think I even liked myself if I couldn't be racing or running at a certain level. And I had to work through that and really work on acceptance before I could even return to that part of my life again.
Mm. What was helpful from the sports psychologists or the people that were helping you with the mental side of it to move towards getting back to kind of some normalcy?
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, it's still ongoing, right? I think I mean, the practice of the practice, like that's just like the perfect summary of what it is to be an athlete, right? It's like or to be a human, right? It's like it's never perfect. You're never really there. It's just you have to continually show up and fall in love with the process. Like that's really what I had to do. And like I said, I'm not really there, but like it was this shift in perspective. So that was something that I worked on with like a sports psychologist is really figuring out my worth outside of just results and why I liked running in general. And I began to discover that had nothing to do with any podiums or any of these medals that, like you can't really like hang on to them and, go to sleep with them at night. Like it's fleeting. It doesn't really matter, right? But it's
Mhm.
just the process that it took you, the things you learned about yourself, getting to that moment, getting to that start line and accomplishing these goals. They're so personal. Like you think that other people care, but really they don't.
Mhm.
And really like figuring out self-worth that's inherent, not conditional. And so really it was a sports psychologist really helped me with that to shift the perspective and to shift that mindset. And then the other really valuable thing that I learned, especially from this man, at the time I was running with the North Face, and they had hired um, a counselor. Well, he had specialized in like grief and loss because there was a lot of that on the North Face team at the time with mountaineers dying and
Mhm.
teammates passing away in the mountains, and so they provided that service for us as athletes to go to. And so I used him after my fall because I was really struggling with this grief and loss of self from my accident. And so yeah, just really trying to understand that part of me. And we used a lot of excuse me, visualization techniques. That was really important for me because as I started to get back into running, even when I was running on a flat trail, my nervous system kind of it was felt like it was on high alert. Like I remember running on a flat path for the first time after the fall, and my brain was telling myself like don't fall, don't fall, don't fall. And there was,
Mhm.
nothing for me to trip on. It was like a flat ground. I wasn't on a ridge. Like it was just so yeah, visualization techniques helped me with that, like breathing techniques to kind of calm my nervous system in times of stress. Uh yeah, all of those things.
Listen, I didn't take insurance in my counseling practice because I had no idea how to handle it. The process of accepting insurance outside of a group practice can be tough, but most people looking for mental health care want to use their benefits to pay for sessions. If you're like me and you feel a little scared about taking insurance or you just want to make it easier on yourself and you're interested in seeing clients through insurance, Alma can help. They make it easy to get credentialed with major insurance plans at enhanced reimbursement rates. They also handle all the paperwork from eligibility checks to claim submission and guaranteed payment within 2 weeks. Plus, when you join Alma, you'll get access to time-saving tools for intake, scheduling, treatment plans, progress notes, and more in their included platform. It's going to make it so much easier for your team. So you can spend less time on administrative work and more time offering great care to your clients. Visit helloalma.com/Joe. That's helloalma.com/Joe to get started. How
Oh,
do you prepare now compared to before? Like when you
yeah.
think about going into like running, like things like visualization, those sorts of things you probably weren't doing as much before.
Mhm.
Like how else do you prepare differently now?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that I prepare differently now is just like falling in love with the whole process of what it means to be an athlete, not just a runner. I think it's continuing to have grace and to have a little bit of patience because the hardest thing as an athlete, it is this finite time in your life where you can kind of perform at this high level, which is beautiful, but it's also frustrating. And so, honestly, the thing,
I don't
like,
know. I just interviewed a like 57-year-old vegan ultra marathoner that is like going like hundreds of miles. So,
yeah, still
uh,
PRing. I mean, then that was my story too. It's like after the fall, I actually raced races that were longer than I'd ever raced before the falls. And in many ways, I'm actually running better. I just PR'd in my marathon time from 12 years ago, from before I even fell. And I've run 100-mile races in the mountains, some of the hardest ones like out there, like UTMB, this race in Ultra Trail Cape Town in South Africa. But for me, the thing that's changed is like I have to approach every season differently, like based on my motivation, because I think that's the thing. I can't just follow where others are racing, but I really have to follow my passion of where I'm excited to go so I can train and like get the most out of myself. Yeah, I've discovered different sports. In fact, I picked up cycling after these accidents and injuries because I couldn't run, and then I got so good at it that I was able to join the Pinarello team and race for them. So it's like
wow.
just having like an open perspective. I think that's the biggest thing that changes from year to year is really like asking myself the question, okay, what makes me excited? And then going after that as opposed to just getting stuck in the rigidity of, race, run, race, repeat.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing is like at the beginning when you first discovered trail running, and then especially like these peaks and kind of becoming the hilly goat, like it was that kind of like almost like childhood like joy of discovering something that you're super into. Like for me, that's improv. Like
Mm,
I've discovered improv 5 years ago, and it's like I freaking love it. And it's so weird, and it's so just the people in it are just so different, and I love it. So you had that like initial joy, and then you got into like the competitive side, and then with the fall it's almost like rediscovering that not just initial joy but a new, even like deeper version of that joy,
mm,
that goes beyond just the achievement side, which I think is such a common pattern, not just in like what you're talking about, but like starting a business. Like, oh my God, I'm going to start a business. And then you get into the thick of it. And it's like, oh, and then often you have a setback. And then you have to rediscover, like, why am I here? Like,
mhm,
is this version of business what I even want to do anymore? Maybe I don't want to see these counseling clients and I'm going to find that new joy. Like for me, it was selling my counseling practice and saying, I'm going to double down on podcasting and consulting. And
mm,
even within that, saying, okay, what I used to do 2 years ago isn't what I do now. And that reinvention.
mm.
As you look at just mindsets, like what mindsets have you learned that just help you? Like you said, finding kind of that joy of just the process of being an athlete. What other mindsets have been helpful for you?
Yeah. I mean, I love everything that you just said because that's literally what I've learned so much about being an athlete is like the why, like rediscovering the why and then following that. Because if I feel, I know if that's not aligned for me, I'm not going to race well no matter what race I choose. So it's like I need to have those alignments. But the other mindsets that I mean, I'm a huge person who likes to write and to journal. And so I mean, the biggest thing, I mean, it's simple. Maybe it's not, it's just for mindset, it's obviously these repeated things that we say in our brain. Like it's basically human consciousness. It's like we're thinking to ourselves and saying these things all the time, and that has power. I remember this study that I read in grad school that like if you talk negatively to a plant, it actually like affects its growth. And this stuff
Mhm.
is real, and I feel like I can be my own worst critic, and so it's the awareness of the words that I'm saying inside my head when I get frustrated. Because obviously I'm not perfect, right? No one is, but it's just the continual awareness and then being able to either write things down if they're negative and then, trying to find a way to reframe them into some sort of positive thing. A really big thing that helped me in my initial recovery was writing down this mantra that was believe in your best athletic days ahead of you. And
Mm.
I would start the day every day by saying that to myself and writing it physically down on a piece of paper. And um, it seemed silly. Like I didn't, no matter how silly it seemed, like when I could just like plop myself on the ground and do these leg lifts because I couldn't even walk unassisted, or it's like it seemed so far away. But I wrote that down to kind of like I felt like I was just growing this little seed and like
Mhm.
nurturing it until it was ready to grow. And I've taken that and kind of like these different, like, what is my mantra or something in these different times of life? Because, I've had injuries after this accident and many setbacks. And so taking a little mantra with me in these different periods of life, it really helps to just continue to, I think, protect a positive mindset because it is it is really powerful.
Yeah, it's interesting how that mindset can like affect you. And sometimes like
Yeah.
I think for a while I had this kind of pushback about it because it felt like the manifestation like, I want a house in Malibu and I'm going to make a vision board, and it's like this self-centered capitalistic just like
No.
stupid. But then it's like, but then when you really think about it, that you're like speaking into your life like what I want. Like
Yeah.
even just this morning, my niece, so my daughter and my nieces and my sister and I always walk to school together because they're all at the
Mm,
same elementary school and we're like a few blocks away. And she's going to be in the talent show. And she was saying like, I'm so nervous. I'm so nervous. And I could just tell like she was getting herself more worked up by doing that.
mm,
And I just like said to her, well, how do you think you're going to feel when you're done with it? Like, are you going to feel proud of yourself? Are you going to feel relieved? Are you going to feel, and she was like, I'm going to feel relieved. And it was like, at least to just like focus on like That's a little
Mm,
better than nervous. Like
right.
focus on the relief you're gonna feel and maybe being proud and maybe thinking you did a good job.
Yeah.
But I think even as adults, like we do that all the time where we think through oh, this could go bad, or what if we don't get enough clients, or that
Mm,
person doesn't like me because they made a snarky comment at a friend's dinner or whatever. Versus like thinking through, okay, what do I want to kind of like speak into my own life?
yeah.
What is your I'm sure you run a lot and keep running and like so that's obviously part of your habits. But like what habits outside of running
Mm.
fill your days, your weeks, your months, like maybe quarterly or annually? Like are there just like other life habits that help you become the person you want to become?
Oh, I love that question. Yeah, so I'm a really big list person. I always write a
Mhm.
to-do list like at the end of, of beginning of each day or kind of at the end of each day to like queue up to the next day. But yeah, of course, like the thing that I love the most about running and training and being an athlete is I feel like it's an opportunity to be the best version of myself. It's like a great day to try, like especially if I have an interval workout. Like it's a good day to work hard. Doesn't have to go perfect, but that is one of kind of I forget the exact word that you use, like the kind of like a daily habit that I have. So it's exercise, but also training for this bigger goal. But I also understand there's different parts of me that make me feel like a whole person. And another one is I'm very curious. That fills the running side of things, but also like the learning. I love to learn. And so I'm a huge reader. And
Mm.
so my training is as an organic chemist and a chemist. And so I always love to read new books on different topics that I'm not familiar with. And so just continuing the process of learning. So that's definitely a part of my
What are
day.
you reading right now?
Oh, right now I'm reading this book by Sam Keen. He's I think like a science historian, and I'm reading this book. It's called Caesar's Last Breath. It
Mm.
talks about gas laws, my favorite laws,
Awesome.
and basically how the atmosphere came to be, and the
Why are
different
gas laws
gases.
your favorite laws?
Oh my gosh, because they're applicable to everything. Like gas laws mean it's how we breathe. It's like how weather is created. I mean, it's like how the tires in my bike work. Like,
Mm.
yeah, it's amazing. It gets kind of windy in the spring. And so I sometimes get mad at it because it's hard to run and ride in. But then I think about it in a different perspective. It's like, oh, the gases are just trying to like reach equilibrium and become the same temperature. So, why be mad at them? Just trying to do their thing.
What do you wish people knew or understood about gas laws?
What do I wish that they knew?
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's just a lot of really cool. I mean, okay, so technology, like not to mention this, like the steam engine, like that thing hasn't actually changed from its invention, which is actually incredible, right? When all the like advancements of technology that we've had. But I mean, the how accessible it is, how simple it is. Like the one thing I think this is in science in general, like people are scared of math or science, but really it is literally in front of you. It's like your computer, the things you can touch. You can chemistry and science in general, it's like just if you just are curious and you look around you, it's right there. This is
Hmm.
why I love running in a nutshell because like the colors that you see, that's just chemical reactions. And then, I mean, it's just everywhere touch, like tangible. You're a living, breathing science experiment, and so it's really actually really not scary at all. It's just how we are.
Love that. It's so cool. I mean, I think that it's even when you said the wind is just the gases trying to seek equilibrium. Like my
Yeah.
mind went to like relationships, and you just even think about how when people are windy, they're trying to seek equilibrium. They're trying to have their own personal autonomy. Like think about the typical couple. They're in a
Yes.
little
Oh man.
skirmish, and it's like they're trying to find that equilibrium of like, how do I find that I have enough power and autonomy and also recognize my partner? And we have different goals here, and we're just windying it out.
I love this. Oh my gosh, that's a good perspective for me because sometimes as a scientist, and I feel like that's ironic because that's how I got neuroscience is like it's so intriguing to me because I am utterly like confused and it's like so profound, like human emotions and the
Mhm.
power that they can have over you and your demeanor and what you can accomplish in the world, right?
Yeah.
But that's a really good way to think about it because sometimes emotions and humans like they confuse me because I'm like, I'd rather deal with the math equation or like go for a run. But But it's all beautiful, is what I'm saying.
It's
And it's like,
elements seeking equilibrium.
I love it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, yeah, it's basically just trying to seek balance. Like I have my own little coaching business. I'm also, so it's like learning is a big pillar in my life. Running an activity is a big pillar in my life. And then community is another really big one. And so it's trying to, merge all of those things together on a daily basis. Sometimes different periods of my life, whether I'm training for a race, like, or have a big important workout, like, that's going to take priority one day or a week or a month at a time. But it's always a constant kind of like ebb and flow of incorporating those pillars in on a daily basis. Yeah.
Oh, so cool. The last question I always ask is if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
That they truly make a difference, and that I mean, one of my favorite scientists of all time is Oliver Sacks, and like just how powerful the human brain is, and how important it is to like to take care of it and help people through hard times in their life. Like you absolutely make a difference and make the world a better place.
Hmm. So awesome. If people want to find your work, if they want to follow your coaching or Instagram or whatever, where should we send them?
Yeah, so my Instagram is Hilly Goat Climbs, so Hillary Allen. And I also have a website, hillaryallen.com. And so there's a lot of, cool information on there. And yeah,
Cool. We will have links to all that in the show notes as well. Thanks so much for being on the show.
thanks. It was so wonderful to chat with you.
It's interviews like this that are just so exciting where, man, we started talking about running, injury, and then we get into mindset, and then we get into gas as a metaphor for relationships. So I think it's just, you never know where you're going to find those jewels that can help you. And so I hope this show is part of that journey for you. I hope that this show opens you up to different ways of thinking that you can take back to your private practice to have that thriving private practice you absolutely love. Thank you so much to Alma for being our sponsor today. I wish Alma had been around when I had my private practice. I had no idea what I was doing. That's why I didn't take insurance. But if Alma had been there, I would have. And there's no reason that as a clinician, you should be spending hours on paperwork to bill for insurance, or not knowing for sure that you'll get reimbursed for sessions with your clients. If you're interested in seeing clients through insurance, but don't want to navigate the process and paperwork on your own, Alma can help. They make it easy to get credentialed with major insurance plans at enhanced reimbursement rates and a guaranteed payment within 2 weeks. Visit helloalma.com/Joe. That's hello, ALMA.com/Joe to get started. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.